Hey everyone, hope you're doing all right today. Today we are kind of doing something special and something that we hope to do more of. Today we're going to be giving our reactions and kind of thoughts. I mean, I guess you could call it a review a little bit.
I mean, we've already watched it, so it's not really a reaction. It's more like just here's our
here's
our takes.
Like the YouTube reaction sense. But of The Rings of Power, we've seen episodes 1 and 2 so far. And so, yeah, that's what the video is going to be about. Primary reason for kind of doing this, because I actually wasn't really that interested in watching the show.
Yeah, neither was I.
Okay. But at least for me, and I'll let Mary speak as to, she might just be doing it because I'm watching it. But primary reason why I was watching it is just I have seen how this show has torn apart particular people that I care about in writing communities that I am a part of, and I just felt it because it's such at least it was such a hot topic. I felt that I should do my research, for lack of a better term, just in case if things ever came up, I could kind of, I had my thoughts and I could give an argument or say a word or just keep my peace, but like I know where I stand, sort of a thing about it, because it was such a cultural touchstone, at least for in the circles that we were both in. So just kind of didn't want to be ignorant of it, even though I wasn't really interested in it.
It's very much the same for me. I'm watching The Rings of Power for very similar reasons to why I watched Harry Potter, not because I was particularly interested in Harry Potter, not because I'm particularly interested in Rings of Power, but because it is, like Aaron said, it's a very hot button issue in the circles that I work and socialize in. I'm a fantasy author, and this is the topic in fantasy circles right now. So yeah, it's very much the same thing for me. I just want to have an informed opinion so that I'm not if someone asks me my opinion, I'm not just repeating hearsay. I can say I've watched it myself and here are my thoughts based on my personal experience with it.
All right, yeah. I felt like there was something I was going to add, but I forgot. So.
Well, what approach are you taking to this
Well,
show?
I thought we should give our background first, and then we can take
okay.
our
Well, I
approach.
thought that was all part and parcel, but
Okay.
Carry on,
So
whatever.
just kind of to be, I don't know, it seems weird to say, like, to be transparent, but just kind of like background, because a lot of the vitriol has come from, it's come from both sides, to be perfectly frank. But, obviously the people who've been very critical of the show, a lot of them have, more of a background in Tolkien's works. For myself, I'm not really all that experienced. The only things that I've read The Hobbit and I've read The Fellowship of the Ring. I have not, and I read like the first 10 pages of the Silmarillion 15 years ago. But that's it as far as books. So like a lot of things that people were kind of up in arms about, like in relating to the Silmarillion or wherever the Rings of Power kind of takes inspiration from, I really have no reference point for. So, like I said, just 2 books, and then I've seen the movies. But that's basically it for me. That's where I'm coming from approaching this, at least in regards to Lord of the Rings.
For me, I have read The Hobbit, I've read the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I've read the Silmarillion, I've read The Children of Hurin, maybe I've read at least part of the Book of Lost Tales, but I would not consider... I consider myself very much a Tolkien fan. I would not consider myself a Tolkien aficionado, if you will. If we were playing a Tolkien trivia game, I would be out in the first couple of rounds. Like, I'm not one of those people who has every detail of the Silmarillion.
Get it right.
I'm trying.
Your fantasy geek card has been revoked.
I know. I'm going to have a little scratch mark on it now. So I don't consider myself an expert. I've read it. I've watched the Peter Jackson trilogy and love them. I've seen the first Hobbit movie, wasn't super impressed, didn't bother seeing the next 2 Hobbit movies. So like I said, I do consider myself a fan. I don't consider myself an expert by any means. So that's kind of my background with Tolkien.
And just to clarify movies, I've seen all the Lord of the Rings movies and the Hobbit movies, so yeah.
I didn't
there's my
realize
one
you'd
up
seen
on
the second and third Hobbit
Oh
movies.
yes, I have.
Okay, well then.
But we're not going to get into that. So kind of background, how we're going to be approaching this, especially for me, because I don't have, like, I've heard people say, oh, well, this is wrong according to lore and this is bad. And I realize it kind of sounds like maybe I'm picking on one side more. The whole point of this is not really to pick on one side or the other. If we're going to pick on sides, I'm going to pick on both equally. No, but but one side has particularly brought up more issues, so to speak. Although I think, I'm going to move that so we don't accidentally stop it. Talking about the video here. One side has brought up more issues than the other, but both have kind of been equally, I would say, vitriolic in whether they are criticizing or
there's
defending,
been a lot of vitriol on both sides.
the Rings of Power. So I'm not really approaching this viewing from the lens of through Lord of the Rings. I think when we get to the end, I might make some comments about like how it relates to Lord of the Rings, or like I think for me it's going to be like the biggest thing is like, well, how does it feel? Because like for me, for like the Hobbit movies, that was my biggest criticism. I did enjoy the first one, and I thought the second one was I enjoyed the second one, and the third one was like the third one I still enjoyed, but it was kind of like there was a definite downgrade there for me. But my biggest complaint for the Hobbit movies is it just didn't feel like Middle Earth to me, and I guess basically the easiest way to just say that is like I didn't get the same feeling from it that I got from the Peter Jackson films. So I might make some overarching commentary like that, like how does it feel, but really anything beyond that, like I don't, like I know stuff like Galadriel's supposed to be married in like a story somewhere or something like that, but I'm not going to be really bringing up anything in regards to that. Anyways, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not coming at this from I'm really going to do my very best to avoid like, well, this is not true to the spirit of Tolkien. I'm not going to go into like, does this match the actual events of the appendices, which is what the series is based on. I'm not really going to go into that because, like I said, I'm not really qualified. I've read them, but not enough. I don't have every detail memorized. So I'm not qualified to be making those comparisons and making those judgment calls on is it accurate, is it not accurate. And I'm going to do my very, very utmost to avoid the political arguments and accusations that have been thrown back and forth over the thing, because that's ridiculous. There's so much ridiculousness on both sides. So I'm going to do my utmost to avoid that as well. I am trying very hard to approach this strictly from the perspective of, is this good story craft? Why or why not?
Yeah, I kind of never really said that about me. Like, I was just like, oh, hey.
So, if you watched my video on the medieval movie trailer a while back, I think it was a couple months ago. I have been out for a couple of months with severe seasonal allergies, and I'm just now getting back to normal. So that's why I've been kind of AWOL for a while. But if you watched that video, I am very, very big into, does this make me feel something? Does it make me emotionally invested?
Sorry, spoilers for notes.
Oh. What? You read my notes?
No, but you told me. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked.
Sorry.
Keep it in.
We have not discussed hardly any of our notes that we have each taken and our thoughts that we both have. So a lot of this, at least in terms of for each other, we're going to be just kind of getting each other's hot takes on this. There's not been hardly any discussion. Anyway, if you watched my video on the medieval movie trailer, I am very big on, you have to make your readers, viewers, whatever, feel something. You have to get them emotionally invested. And there's a lot of that pops up, at least in these first two episodes. But I'm mainly going to be focusing on, is this good from a storycraft perspective? why or why not. So that's primarily where I'm coming from with this.
Okay. And me too, just to kind of clarify. Now, for me particularly, I might have some more cinematic, like, aspects that I talk about, like, once or twice, just kind of like with camera work and whatnot. But yeah, this is basically, we are trying our best to just analyze it from a story perspective, as just a story, not even Lord of the Rings attached to it.
Yeah.
So that's how we're going into it. So I guess without further ado, with our 10 minutes of setup, we can go into our notes.
We can maybe put little tags in the description so they can skip the intro if they want.
So, speaking of exposition setup, I'm such a total hypocrite. My first note is...
I didn't even think about that.
My first note was, basically, we have about 8 minutes of exposition and setup. Now, one thing that isn't entirely true is we did have that one early scene when Galadriel's like a little girl, so technically that's not exposition, but it's still kind of set up.
And there's still a lot of voiceover.
Yeah, because wasn't there voiceover during that scene too?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, I could be misremembering.
Yeah, there was, I'm pretty sure.
So, it just, especially... Now, here's one thing where I will talk about with Lord of the Rings, but it is kind of just in general, that's a lot of talking. Like, have you guys watched Cinema Sins? That's definitely worth a sin there. Although,
I think that might be worth 2 or 3 sins.
Yeah. There was just a lot of setup, and if you wanted to compare it to the Lord of the Rings movies, I don't know. It just did not carry the same, because exposition can just kind of be a tricky thing, and I don't know if I can completely and fully say like, oh, Lord of the Rings got it right this way, and Rings of Power didn't get it right that way. I don't know. I would have to really like study both. To say like why one works and why, because I feel that the Lord of the Rings intro works and Rings of Power really doesn't, or I shouldn't say that it doesn't work, like as if it's a bad thing, and I kind of giving it away a little bit. I don't really feel a lot with Rings of Power. I don't genuinely feel that there's lots of bad things with this episode. But there's not really any good things either, in my opinion. It's just kind of very... So, in the same way, I kind of feel very neutral about the exposition and the setup. It's like, okay, I understand that we need to get this information. The only thing that I would really detract from it is it's just like, it's a lot. Like, for anything, whether it's a TV series, a movie... anything like that, you don't want 8 minutes of exposition.
And I think a difference between the exposition at the beginning of Lord of the Rings, and the Peter Jackson movies, and the beginning of episode 1 of Rings of Power is at the beginning of Lord of the Rings, the exposition that we get is, first of all, covering a massive time period.
Well, I mean, so is Rings of Power, to be fair.
Yes, but it is summarizing very concrete, specific events. The ring finding Gollum, and how, or Smeagol, I guess, at that point, whatever. It's very specific events that are very obviously and directly relevant to the story that we are immediately pulled into, the storyline that we are immediately pulled into. The intro of Rings of Power Episode 1, there's a lot of concepts that are being explored. And it's not, and yes, there are some specific events, like, we went to fight for Middle-earth or whatever, but it's not immediately clear why is this relevant to the plot line that we're getting pulled in. And I'm jumping a little bit ahead of myself here, but I'm just, since we're on the topic, I'm going to go ahead and say, it's not even really clear to me so far, having watched episode 1 and episode 2, it's not even really clear to me what the primary storyline is. Like, they don't know what to focus on. They're so scattered trying to focus on so many different things at once. And episode 2 was a lot worse about that than episode 1 was. But, with Lord of the Rings, it's immediately apparent okay, this voiceover intro exposition that we got.
Which is Galadriel, by the way.
It's yes.
I don't know why that didn't just occur. Why that just occurred to me.
But it's immediately apparent. Here's why this is relevant. Here's where we're picking this thread up. That's not immediately apparent, at least not so far, in the first 2 episodes of The Rings of Power. So I think the way the Lord of the Rings movies are set up, it's like, here's this exposition, and here's why it's important. Mm-hmm. Rings of Power is like, here's this exposition, and so there's a guy over there, and there's this girl over here, and they're doing totally separate things, and we're not sure how any of this is connected to any of that. So, I mean, I'm exaggerating to make a point, but that's the general idea, at least for me.
Okay. I don't have anything until they find, like, the Dark Fortress, which I don't have the name of, so do you have?
Yes. So story-wise, it's very good that they did establish, theoretically it's good, that they established the brother-sister relationship between Galadriel and, what was her brother's name? Galadriel and her brother. It's good.
That's a criticism I kind of have. And you know, it could just be me, but I don't know why. It's just hard for me to remember characters' names in this show.
Yeah.
Like, I know, like if you want to say, like, the POV characters, mm-hmm. like, I know Nori, I know Galadriel, I know Elrond, I know Durin, I know mm-hmm. Arondir, you know, mm-hmm. I know Bronwyn.
But the secondary people...
But I couldn't tell you. I can't.
Yeah.
I have to think about any of the other characters' names.
Yeah. Anyway, theoretically, it is really good that they establish Galadriel's brother-sister bond with her older brother early on, because his death is supposed to be this huge catalyst for her. The problem is they chose a really... And I understand time constraints, especially when you're working with an episode of a TV show instead of a movie where you can have, 2-3 hours if you want. I understand with time constraints, they probably only had time for one real brother-sister scene to establish this brother-sister bond. But they chose a really unmoving scene to do that with. Like, there's not a lot of particular, okay, her brother comes and has a talk with her after she was standing up to some bullies. It's not particularly emotional. Like, he's not really, she's not particularly, she's angry, but she's not like, she doesn't seem hurt or upset, so it's not like he's consoling her, so we see, oh, he's this great source of comfort to her. He gives her some advice, ostensibly, because we don't hear what it is, which also annoyed me because that felt very much like a cop-out on the part of the writers. Like, he needs to give her some sage advice, but we don't know what it is, so he just whispers it. We don't hear it.
But they do tell it.
They do tell it later. But that's later.
Yes.
Because I have notes.
Uh-huh.
I have notes on when it comes out, what it was later. So he gives her some vague advice about, again, a very large concept about why do rocks sink and boats float. Like, it's a very vague, abstract concept. So there's not really anything there for us to anchor emotional investment to in regard to their brother-sister bond. So when he is killed, we can intellectually realize, oh, she's probably really upset. But she's, first of all, an adult at that point, and she was a small child in the first scene. So we don't know, like, what may have happened to their relationship because we don't see them together.
Well, I
kind of
got the impression like he was sailing off to fight. So it may have happened that he died when she was still a kid. But
well,
that's
no,
just
because she's an adult when she sees his body and takes his dagger.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he wasn't killed until
Never
she was
mind.
an adult.
I'm
So we don't know what their relationship was like in the interim. We're not given any snippets or views or flashbacks of that. So we have this one particularly not particularly moving scene of when she's a little kid, when he gives her this very vague, abstract advice about a vague, abstract concept, and then he's an adult. So we don't feel the loss. So
it's just kind of like, oh, he's dead.
And I oh wait, do I have more of this?
Well, one thing I'll just say is the
this was
whole
irrelevant.
Picture that was kind of much maligned before the show came out about Galadriel going up the ice wall with the dagger or whatever. That didn't bother me. I mean, I think it's more elf kind of dumbness, but we can get into that later. But like that didn't bother me. I didn't care about it.
I didn't have any particular beef with...
Yeah.
Honestly, my biggest beef in that scene was like, why does her chainmail look all ragged? Like, why are the edges of her chainmail all frayed? Secondly, have you ever put on...
Shed it.
No, I do not have anywhere near Shad's qualifications for talking about the realism of the weapons and armor and fight scenes and all of that.
He's a YouTuber, in case you're not familiar.
We'll link to him in the description.
Yeah.
But he's linked in the description of a lot of our videos. At least a lot of mine. So it was just weird to me. Like, why is her chainmail all, like, ragged and tattered around the edges?
Mary.
Secondly, have you ever tried to put on a chainmail hood with long hair?
Except I don't think it is, but I'm going to make that excuse.
I don't think it was mithril.
It's mithril.
I don't think mithril was invented yet by this point.
Well, I know some stuff. So.
Oh, well, whatever. But you don't want to put on chainmail on your head when you have long hair. You just don't. That's all I will say.
So what's your next thing?
My next thing is the fight scene with the ice troll, or the snow troll.
Okay, so I have just a few things before we get to there.
So,
one thing, because this will be something that I'm sure Mary kind of brings up, is that, and I know so many movies and shows do this, so it's not like some great big sin that this happened, but this is just the first of multiple instances where it's like, well, of course. That on the point where, they're going through the winter weather and this horrible place, and they're like, we need to go back, and it seems like even Galadriel's finally considering doing that. She put her cloak around another person, and then of course they find the place they're looking for just at the very point that they're giving up. So there was that. Like I said, that's not a really big issue in and of itself. A lot of things do that. Sometimes as a writer, you just have to do that. But that kind of makes
it an issue. Like, so many things do that.
Well, but we haven't. Well, yeah, I mean, yes, there is that. So at worst, what I'll say right now is that you're not differentiating yourself from your competitors. You're just kind of you're going with the average mean here. And I do bring this up because I have just seen people who they gushed about the character interactions. This place is so evil. Our torches give no warmth. That was a horrible line. There's a way that you can say that without it sounding hokey. That sounded hokey to me.
Yeah. Honestly, a lot of the writing, not just the actual lines of dialogue, but just like you were talking about, we're just on the point of giving up, and then we find it. So much of the writing just felt like inexperience on the part of the writers.
Well, there might be something to that.
It just
I honestly
they
know more stuff surrounding the show than the actual show. So if I say kind of things like that, that's because I know I've been paying more attention to the stuff surrounding the show than the actual show.
I have tried to avoid it because I just don't need that kind of drama in my life.
But and let me just give credit where credit's deserved. I actually like the idea of this place is so evil that there's no warmth. Like, they could have done a good job with that. But when you
Without
deliver a
making it
line...
sound cheesy.
Yeah, when you deliver a line like that, like, yeah, it just, I can't remember if I laughed or snickered when that happened.
Yeah, I think you did.
Okay. But yeah, like, that was my reaction when they was like, oh, come on.
Somehow.
Yeah.
Palpatine has returned.
Yeah. But, like, they totally could have played with that and done a good job. Like, I would have to think about it.
There would totally
people
be
would be
ways
like,
that
well,
you
how
could-
about you come up with it? I'm like, well, if you give me time, like the time that they had, I could have come up with.
And
with
it might
some
have
way.
taken you a few lines threaded throughout the scene.
Or you
to
don't
communicate
even have to
the
say
idea,
it.
but-
Like, you could just be someone, like, show, don't tell. Be like, I can't feel our torches, Why can't I feel anything? Now, of course, you would have to have some kind of, like, quantitative statement to clarify it. So that way because at first when they said it, I'm like, oh, wow, he's got frostbite. But no, it's because it was so evil.
So evil.
And then another thing, just kind of commenting on Galadriel's character. I know a lot of people don't like her, and I'm just trying to be kind of neutral right now. One thing that is kind of a critique for her character, she says, and this will build, she says, until it is vanquished, this evil, I cannot go home. I think, and it's something that I want to do some research on, because I want to look at examples of, like, kinds of characters like this that were done right. Is that I do believe that I do believe that you can do a character this way, that they're so... I mean, we've seen it. Of course, I don't have any examples coming to my mind right now, but we've seen it where a character's so devoted to their cause, they turn a completely blind eye to everything else. They don't care about collateral damage, which is kind of like the feeling I get that they're trying to go for with Galadriel. And you do kind of see, like, a little motes of emotion, like when she puts the cloak around the one soldier. But just with a comment like this and just what we see further on is, it strikes me of like, with this particular quote, my thought was like, okay, you may not want to go home, but what of all the people with you? Like any good leader needs to realize that, the lives of the people under them, unless the point that you're trying to make is that they're being callous, which I don't think the show is trying to make.
Well, they had that moment where she gives her cloak to the person who is struggling from just exhaustion from the cold, but even then, like, she showed no
Sympathy?
second thoughts. Like, oh, this... And I mean, elves are supposed to be very resilient, so there was no, like, oh, wow, this person is, like, I've pushed them to the point that even this resilient elf is breaking down. Maybe I need to reconsider my action. Like, it was like, well, here, have this cloak so that you can get back up and keep helping me on my mission.
But we didn't see that, because that's when we saw the cut to the shot of the place they found. So there was no emotional resolution there, if I recall correctly. And I think one thing, if kind of like the point you're trying to make is just like this person is just so devoted to their cause, I think in the setup that should have been something that you needed to set up, because with how they showed her, and if the character course that they're wanting to take is like she's so devoted to her cause that she, come hell or high water, she's going to do what she needs to do, which I don't think they're necessarily
and
going
hang the
for.
cost to anyone else.
Well, yes, but to be invested as a watcher, you have to give us a compelling reason for that, and they didn't give us a compelling reason.
Well,
because otherwise it just comes, well, she's just kind of being mean. She's just kind of a jerk. She's just kind of being unreasonable. And the character can still be all those things, but we can go like, but we understand why they're being mean or a jerk. Well, a good example would be
like the Count of Monte Cristo. He's purposely, deliberately destroying people's lives. No thought for the collateral damage, no thought for who he's out to hurt these people. But we also watched him spend 13 years in this horrible, torturous dungeon. So we get why. Even if we totally agree with him, like, hey, vengeance is not going to make you feel better.
Disagree with him? You said agree with him.
Oh, even if we disagree with what he is doing, we understand, hey, you have a very understandable reason why you're doing this, even if
And
the outworking of that is wrong.
Mm-hmm. And so therefore we're still invested in the story.
Exactly.
So my big thing is like that takes investment
and we want him to get better, which, spoilers, in the movie version, this is one of the very few cases where I think the movie's better than the book. In the movie version...
How long do we want this video to be?
In the movie version, he does get better, and he does learn that he's wrong. In the book version, he does not. And it's tragic and depressing and awful. Is Galadriel going to be a book version Count of Monte Cristo? Or is she going to be a movie version Count of Monte Cristo? Like, hooray... Sort of, if she ends up being a movie version Count of Monte Cristo. But it's still going to fall flat even if she does, because they're not building up like, oh, she lost her brother. Yeah, well, lots of other elves lost their brothers and didn't do this. Like, and we weren't shown a particularly deep, poignant relationship between them, so we don't really understand. We don't really have any special investment.
And I get the feeling that we won't, considering that they haven't done any. There's no other flashbacks in the first episode and none at all in the second one. Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
So you can talk about the fight. My comment mainly has to do with after the fight.
I was indifferent to Galadriel up until this fight scene. By the end of this fight scene, I loathe Galadriel. Because this entire fight scene, she just seethes arrogance. She's so arrogant in the way... What?
I'm listening. I'm just like, oh, wow.
She's so arrogant in the way that she's... Like, when she... First of all these other elves were... I understand Galadriel is supposed to be some amazing, incredibly skilled warrior. Okay, fine. But there were like, what, at least half a dozen other elves with her.
It was like 8 or 10.
I didn't actually count them. But
like
there had to have been at least a half a dozen. So you're telling me all of them, none of them were able to do any kind of damage, score any points at all on this snow troll, and Galadriel comes in and kicks its butt single-handedly with
she got launched into the air with the sword.
Yes, she did get launched into the
air.
That
totally evoked Legolas running up falling rocks for me in the Hobbit movie.
I didn't watch that one of the Hobbit
I think that was the last one.
I think that scene was... I think seeing a snippet of that scene was why I didn't watch that.
Which is just kind of...
But the whole...
they're elves and they're awesome.
Jumping off the sword thing... I'm not... Shadiversity has covered that.
Did he really? That particular scene?
Not in a lot of detail, but he screamed in agony at that little clip. Anyway, just the whole fight scene. So she manages to bring the snow troll to its knees single-handedly while everyone else is just like... And then she turns her back to it, which, first of all, is just really dumb. It doesn't show confidence. It shows stupidity. And
no, she's so confident that she can turn her back on the troll.
No. Okay, just no. So, it's still alive. She turns her back to it and does this big, fancy flourish thing with her sword before turning around and finishing it off. You are literally doing nothing but showing off to the people with you how arrogant do you have to be. And those are my thoughts on the fight scene.
Okay. All right. I thought it was going to be longer. Well, that's good.
It would be longer if I keep going, it's going to be a whole lot longer. So we need to just move on before I get going.
I just kind of accepted it as typical, like, oh, elves are the best and amazing and they do whatever. You know, again, we kind of see that in the Hobbit movie.
Yeah, but none of the other elves do anything. Just
I know,
Galadriel.
But there's kind of precedence for it. So that, I mean, I did think the whole sword launch thing was a little goofy.
A little.
I'm trying to be charitable. I thought that was a little goofy, and the things that she brings up, I can agree with. Especially in retrospect, like I didn't really feel like the arrogance, but it's like, oh yeah, I could totally see how you would feel that way. For me, my biggest issue is, especially considering that 3 elves got a chunk of ice thrown at them, and there was one that got like picked up and smashed into a pillar, and at the end of the fight, they're all like standing,
and then nobody's hurt.
Yeah, like there's not even a guy going.
Nobody has like scratches on their face, like
what the heck, man?
Like
did
Arwen
did
is
none
an
of that
elf's
happen?
tooth, and a tree branch left a bloody scratch on her face.
Yeah,
so elves are not invulnerable.
So yeah, that for me was the worst part of the scene. It's like, oh, okay, so nothing happened to them apparently, especially that one guy who probably is dead. But is somehow standing, that got smashed against the pillar with a monstrous... Ah, dang it, I keep doing that. But yeah, that was my problem with that scene. I kind of don't have a lot.
My next note is the moose antler guys.
Okay. Well, I'll just give my 2 bits then for the next 2 scenes, because all I really have to say is I loved the set work that they did with the Harfoot's camp. I think that was really greatly done. I think... the scenery is definitely one of the strongest aspects of the show. Mm-hmm. And I do think that there are definitely certain aspects of it that evoke kind of that Middle Earth feeling to it that we've seen established before. Mm-hmm.
There were especially some of those I noticed in episode 2. Mm-hmm. Some really beautiful shots that I thought, okay, yes, this looks like Middle Earth. Mm-hmm.
And then also at Linden, which was like the elf place, I thought the scene work was also very well done. Mm-hmm. But I don't really have anything more to say than that.
The 2 moose antler guys seemed so very tropey to me. First of all, what was their purpose in being there? Like, okay, they were supposed to be some kind of omen. Okay. But, like, you could have just had some Harfoots or Harfeet or whatever they are. Like, oh, look, there's travelers. The moose hunters are coming back. Was it early in the season or late in the season or sometime when they're not supposed to be? But no, instead we have dialogue with these 2 moose antler guys. And they just seemed so cliche. You have the high-voiced stupid one asking, what was that? Oh, I think it must have been a badger. And then the other, you have the grizzled, deep, gravelly voiced one who knows all this stuff. Oh, it's probably a Harfoot. You better keep moving. Blah blah blah. Like, I've seen that pair in so many different. Why are you laughing?
I'm just laughing. I'm just hearing the derision in your voice, and it makes me laugh.
I'm sorry. I shall strive to be more professional and impartial. Like, I have seen that pair in so many. I mean, okay, Pirates of the Caribbean. What are the 2 guys? There's like the bald guy and then the guy.
Oh, Pintel and Rigetti.
Sure, them. Like, are these actually any different characters? They're the same.
They're not as
characters,
lovable.
Just in a very much not. And Pinto and Rigetti actually served a purpose.
Pintel, not Pinto.
Well, it sounded like you said Pinto.
Not,
I don't remember what.
He's not a bean, Mary.
Anyway, they actually like had a role in Pirates of the Caribbean, and Antler guys.
They're
didn't.
Antler guys. That's their role. Respect the role.
And then there were some very confusing cuts to the Harfoots. I agree with Aaron. I really liked the set work. I thought it was very delightful and charming. And Aaron often talks about how, I am a misplaced hobbit or wood nymph or something because I would totally live in the little Harfoot camp because I thought it was delightful. But I still don't know what it actually has to do with the storyline of the show. I also thought it was very random that, okay, we see the moose antler guys trekking along the ridge of this hill, and then there's all these little Harfoots popping up all over the place, and then everyone is so shocked and aghast that there's actually travelers at this time of year. I forget.
And wasn't like the one that they actually showed the face, he was like smiling too?
That I don't remember specifically.
Okay. Which would seem to be at odds
with... It kind of seems like it was.
The sentiment in the canon.
But, okay, if you're not expecting travelers at this time of year, why do you have so many sentries out there?
Well, they could have been, out gathering stuff or something.
I mean, theoretically. It just seemed odd to me.
Nitpicker.
Yeah, a lot of the Harfoot scenes, I just didn't understand...
I will hold my commentary till the end.
Okay. You can have seemingly disconnected settings and characters and what have you, and even, plot threads in a movie, book, show, whatever. You can have those, but along the way, you need to drop us little breadcrumbs showing, giving us hints at the very least of here's how they might connect later. Here's why these seemingly unrelated people over here might be relevant later. Here's the, what is the term for the magic MacGuffin? Is that what they call it? Here's this thing that they have that turns out is going to solve this mystery that they're trying to solve. And we haven't really seen any of that so far, 2 episodes in, which is a little bit getting ahead of myself. But yeah, I'm really not sure why are these people here. And then I just had a really brief note about the scene with Galadriel and Elrond in Lindon. Did you have anything you want to... Okay. Galadriel is a stellar example of how not to grieve in a healthy way and how not to accept help from very wise and very well-meaning friends who you really should listen to. I really, there was so much vitriol about the casting choice for Elrond. Do I think he resembles Hugo Weaving in any way beyond Caucasian male? No. There's no resemblance beyond that. But
he has brown hair, right? Brownish.
Yeah, his hair is lighter.
I'm making the video longer.
But whatever. But I do really... Casting choice... Whatever. Irrelevant. But I really like Elrond's character and what they're doing with him. And he's a really good friend to Galadriel and a way better friend than she deserves in this scenario. He is trying to help her let go and work through her grief in a healthy way because her grief has been festering for centuries and has turned into this consuming rage that is ruining her life and now is starting to impact others. You mentioned, what about these people that I'm dragging with me on this mission that I'm obsessed with? What's happening? Do they want to be here? And Elrond is trying to help her let go of that, and she's being pretty nasty to him about it. So that scene did not help my feelings toward Galadriel at all. And then we have a random cut back to the Harfoots.
Okay, well, nope. Okay, my stuff.
Okay.
So one thing, I don't know if you kind of got this feeling, but when the king's giving his speech and he's talking about, all the great stuff that you all have done and now you can enter the rest, did it seem like there were certain scenes, it looked like she was almost glowering at the king? Yeah. I understand you're upset about this, but
this angry...
have some decorum.
Yeah.
Try to hide your emotions from the person who...
Yeah.
I don't know how elf hierarchy would work, but I would assume that most people wouldn't show up in front of a king with that expression.
Yeah,
but especially when they're supposed to be getting
get
rewarded,
a
even if you don't
yourself.
feel like it. And then I do agree with what you're saying, with what you said with the scene with Elrond. For me, the biggest things... And again, like I said, there are aspects of Galadriel that, if are done right, can be done well. But so far, at the point that we're at, so far, we haven't seen that. Because we can be interested and intrigued by a character who's on the road to destruction if it's done in a good way. A, I don't think that's what they're trying to do with Galadriel, but B, they're not doing it well either.
I don't get the feeling so far. I don't get the feeling that they wrote her as a character who is in a toxic, unhealthy place and needs to get better.
Yeah.
I think they're writing her as like she's just this kick butt warrior woman out there kicking butt and taking names, and like it doesn't feel like the writers see her as incredibly emotionally unhealthy.
Yeah,
which she is.
I would agree. But for me, there was a line that I thought was pretty bad. When Galadriel's talking to Elrond and she says, well then, he's talking about, oh, well, Sauron's gone. And she's like, well then why is the evil not gone here? And she points to her.
Because you need to let go, dear.
And it can be for a multitude of people are stupid. People can be delusional. People can be too hurt to let things go. All of these are valid things. But it's supposed to indicate some reason that she's actually right. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what the show's directing us towards.
Yeah.
But there's all these things. That's not a valid reason. And it makes her sound childish.
It does, yeah.
So,
well, I still have these feelings. Mm-hmm. Well, that's because you haven't worked through them, and you need some grief counseling.
Yeah. And so then another quote that I'm not critiquing this one, but I think it kind of highlights like what some people have gripes with Galadriel. Well, I shouldn't say highlights, but like, because people are talking about how Galadriel's essentially a Mary Sue, and she's just one in a long line of kick-butt females that have been, that's what a strong female protagonist, basically.
Being a strong woman means you have to punch things.
Yes, because I'm not saying that she is that. I'm just saying this is what some people have brought up. And one thing that kind of leans into that is she gives the line of, well, Elrond talks about like basically laying her sword aside, and she's like, well, what is it? Without it, what am I to be? Mm-hmm. So obviously she finds her identity in fighting. Again, there's nothing wrong with that on the surface, and I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with it right now where we're at in the series. The question is, are they going to do anything with it? I have my doubts, but I'm trying to be generous here. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with that. I think we've all seen characters where like, the honorable warrior sort of a thing, like that's all they know. They totally could have gone that route. They haven't established that. Like, think about the Jedi. Mm-hmm. The Jedi are supposed to be, like, there's the joke. Well, aren't you, like, practically married to your lightsabers? Obi-Wan goes, this is your life. You can...
Well, and the sword is a symbol of her quest for vengeance, which, again, going back to the Count of Monte Cristo parallel, his vengeance has become his purpose, and it ruins his life. And this is ruining Galadriel's life, but she won't let it go. So, like you said, like they could take this in a good direction where she learns that she's wrong and gets to a more healthy place, but it doesn't feel like the writers
or she doesn't learn and we are just pulled in and fascinated by her destruction.
Exactly.
Either one of those paths can work. And they're just like going this third way off a cliff that doesn't work at all. Yeah. So,
it doesn't feel like the writers are writing her as this is unhealthy and needs to change.
Let me see. Okay, so you had the Harfoots. You go.
So backtracking just a little bit. So there's a cut back to the Harfoots where I just felt it was a very the character dynamics that were shown. I felt that it was extremely cliche because you have the free-spirited dreamer girl who just has questions and wants to know what the floating lanterns are and wants to, like, we've seen this character...
Disentangled.
I'm not disentangled. But I won't disentangled. But we've seen this character in a million... things. We've seen this character in a million different applications. The free-spirited dreamer girl who just wants to explore and learn and find answers to her burning questions, and the fearful, controlling parents that we don't ask questions.
Well, I don't know if those are her parents necessarily, but elders.
Well, yeah,
village elders.
Whoever seems to be responsible for her.
She does have a dad. I'm sorry. I forgot about that.
Okay, I thought that was her dad, but I thought, well, maybe I
and then there's the woman, but I don't know if that's her mom or if it's just like... Because isn't she oftentimes with, like, the other guy who's, like, the head guy of the tribe, too? I might just be getting faces wrong. But
I don't know.
I don't know if that's her mom
There's
or if it's
so many.
it's meant to be obviously some
Harfoots.
maternal figure, whether it's actually her mom
Well,
or
there's
not.
so many Harfoots, and they're all constantly moving around and intermixing, and they all have branches in their hair, and yeah. So and we never see any of them.
Don't give them grief for that. You totally have branches in your hair if you could get away with it.
When I'm working outside, because they get stuck there. And we don't really see many of the Harfoots for more than like a tiny snippet. So that's another critique, I guess, is like there's so many of them and they all just pop in and out so fast that it's hard to keep track of who's who. So just these, these very fearful, backward-thinking, controlling parents. We don't ask questions. Who ever heard of such a thing? Questions get people killed. Don't you remember what happened to your cousin? She asked a question and was never seen again. Like that type of... We've seen that a million times. Show some originality. So, yeah, going to what you were talking about, Galadriel being granted passage to the Grey Havens, this was actually the first moment in this whole first episode that I actually felt any emotion at all. I actually felt...
Oh, so you didn't feel any emotion during the troll fight scene?
Okay, like, emotion that I think they wanted me to feel when they wrote this. That's the first time I felt any emotion that the writers were like, we're gonna make them feel this. Because I felt some of that, like, but my task isn't done, my quest isn't completed, I'm going to have to leave it. I felt some of that futility, I guess. But then Galadriel immediately cancels that out by being super combative with Elrond, emotionally combative. She's not like physically combative. And he's just trying to help her work through some really unhealthy emotions, and she's being super combative, like he's trying to keep something good from her. No, he's trying to keep his friend from destroying her life as she has been for the last however many centuries. So I got that little bit of emotion, like, oh, I feel that futility, that frustration, that sense of leaving something undone. And, yeah, no, gone now. Okay, whatever. So
what's the next thing you have?
When, is it Arondir or Arondir?
Yes.
When he shows up in the village. That's the next thing I've got.
Okay, you go ahead with that.
Okay. Really, just one thing. It really, really bothers me that Arondir and whatever his friend partner's name is, they come trooping into the village with their hoods pulled so low and their heads down, walking like this. And so everyone's like...
Here, let me demonstrate.
Except your hood's not... Yeah, basically. Except not even that much of their face was showing. So... They come walking into the village with these huge hoods covering their entire faces. One of us. And so, understandably, everyone is like, "Oh, who's that? Who's coming? Should we be worried? Should we maybe take the kids and go inside and lock the door?" Okay, so I'm thinking, oh, there's some strange travelers coming. Arondir then walks into the tavern. But why someone would be butchering an animal in the middle of the tavern?
Because they're barbarians.
Maybe, I don't know.
They have evil blood in their veins.
But he walks into the tavern, pulls his hood off, and everybody's like, "Oh, hey, Arondir, it's been a while since you were here. My goodness, has it been 2 weeks already?" And he's like, "Oh, hey, guys, how are things going?" And then he walks outside, still without his hood on, or still with his hood off. His partner has now taken his hood off. They're walking around the village, and everybody knows who they are.
Rule of cool, Mary.
So why were you wearing your hood?
Looks cool.
No, it doesn't look cool.
Looks cool.
All you
looks
accomplished
mysterious
was needlessly alarming people. Like, whether your intention is to rob a bank or not, you don't walk into a bank wearing a ski mask. Because people are gonna freak.
Yes, but the show writers thought it looked cool, so therefore, or whoever.
But see, that just goes back to, it feels like very juvenile, inexperienced writing. Like, I would have written something like that when I was 15.
Let's be fair.
Because it's cool.
I mean, that's why it's
But I was
a thing
15.
called the rule of cool. Like, it's just done because it looks cool.
Yeah, like...
Sorry.
But it needs to serve some purpose. Yeah, so it just made the whole thing feel not just that scene. And, it could have been done well, even if it was purely for audience benefit and not for the other characters, if we knew beforehand who this character was. Like, if we had seen him before, and he's showing up in a surprising location, or we thought he was dead, and lo and behold, he takes the hood off, and he's actually still alive. But we've never seen this character before. This is the first time he appears in the show. So we have no, is it normal for him to be here? I mean, apparently so. But then, again, why did he have his face all covered and was walking all suspiciously like a creep? It doesn't make any sense. And so that was just one of many things that just made the whole thing feel very... formulaic, like just a bunch of badly recycled, not even recycled, just reused without even washing them first, tropes. So, yeah.
So that's all you got from that scene?
From that scene, yes.
Okay. So me, I kind of felt like, what was kind of the point of that whole tavern scene? I mean, except beyond that, there was the field that was poisoned or something along those lines.
Yeah, we hear mention of that.
And that some of the humans there have resentment towards the elves. Mm-hmm. Which could have been shown elsewhere somehow.
And you could have done it in a much more streamlined way without the hassle of adding that whole extra scene. Yeah. Like, you could have trimmed a lot of fat off of this episode with that.
And then this one kind of just has to do with the direction a little bit. I thought when Erondir and Bronwyn were talking, there was a time where they're conversing back and forth, and for whatever reason, they had like 3 different shots. They had one of like, it was like angled towards Erondir, but Bronwyn was also in the shot, and I could be forgetting another one. And then they had 2 more pulled out shots that was just of Erondir and one just of Bronwyn. And then they had these I think they did it 4 times, these really weird, like, super close-up shots of Erondir and Bronwyn. So it was Erondir talking, super close-up on his face. I mean, not super close-up like I've seen in, like a Good, the Bad, and the Ugly or whatever.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't think of his name.
Like a sci-fi channel B-movie.
So, like, you're still seeing, like, their whole face and, like, their shoulders. But in comparison to the other shots, it's super close up. And then it was super close up on her. And then back to him. And then back to her. And then we go back out. And I'm just kind of like...
I didn't think about that at the time. But
yeah,
that
was
a little
strange.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. Maybe they were trying to heighten tension. They obviously didn't do their job as I thought they did. It just felt weird and out of place.
We get the idea that, okay, there's a little bit of a budding forbidden romance here,
mm-hmm.
but, like...
I felt like the camera shots were distracting from that. Mm-hmm. And then, just another thing of, like, kind of the conversation between Erondir and his friend as they're leaving town, and Erondir has, like, his friend is like, oh, hey, why are you rubbing elbows with this human chick,
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to be doing that. And, like, Erondir's comeback is something, and then he finishes it off with, like, and you smell of rotten leaves. I don't know. That just...
Yeah, it felt
just like...
You're trying to show camaraderie, I guess.
Maybe. I don't know. It just kind of...
But it felt...
I guess it fell flat. I don't know. I can't... Because, like, when he said it, it didn't make me snicker like some of the other lines have.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just kind of like... Like, okay, you said that. Why exactly? Like that particular thing. Anyways, and then there was one scene in the Watchtower, and it could just be me. Maybe it was just how, maybe rewatching it, I would feel differently. But there was a musical shift, kind of when Erondir was talking to his captain. It just felt a little weird to me. And yeah, that was...
Here I am, the music person, and I didn't notice.
Well, like I said, I could be totally wrong.
Well, I might have also been distracted with the 2-year-old at that point.
True. So what you got next?
My next note is not until the very last scene of the show. So do you have anything before then? Or maybe we're to the last scene of the show. I don't remember.
Well, the last scene of the show is when the guy comes down from the sky.
Oh, well, no. Okay, then it's the scene where Galadriel and the elves are about to go into the Grey Havens.
Okay, so that's the only thing you have?
That's the only thing I have left.
Okay, so I'll just say... I guess I'll just make my comment on like the Harfoot scenes. I think they're enjoyable. They're very visually stimulating, but I kind of feel like there's no point to them. Like, if we just go through the entire episode, there's no point to any of it until the very end, and even the very end is just kind of like this mystery.
But we
the
don't
mystery
know
could
why
have been,
it's going to
exactly.
be important.
This mystery could have been done with any of the other characters in the group, and it would have still had the same effect of being a mystery. And so... it feels like, and there are things that I know, well, I'll just say it. Apparently these are, the screenwriters were, the story runners, they're like, I wouldn't say proteges, but they are from Bad Robot, from J.J. Abrams. Mm-hmm. So it does feel very mystery, but I'm not one of those people that likes to hate on J.J. Abrams.
Nothing has blown up so far.
J.J. Abrams? No, it should be lens flares, not blowing stuff up. That would be Michael Bay. Get your tropes right.
I'm sorry. You said J.J. Abrams.
I'm not one of those people that likes to hate on J.J. Abrams. Not saying that he doesn't have certain weaknesses, but with the whole Harfoots thing, everything with the Harfoot scene just feels like a mystery box, as J.J. Abrams is well known for being quoted for. And like, okay, there's a reason all this stuff is happening, but why? And that's what I got from the whole first episode. But why, but why, for every of the scenes of the Harfoots. Like, it feels like it's building to something, but what is that? And without there being some sort of through line, I kind of don't care. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm like, okay, you could have just cut this out, even and I don't care. Like, you literally could have just had the guy falling from the sky, and you would have accomplished the same exact thing mm-hmm. that you've got. Now, maybe in retrospect, it will all make sense. I don't know if it will.
But you should be dropping breadcrumbs along the way to make us care about both storyline, or all three however many storylines you have going at this point.
And then just another little thing, not with the Harfoots, it is getting to the last scene that you're going to talk about, and I'm going to let you take most of it until we get to a particular part. But and something that you actually pointed out is that when Galadriel jumps off the boat and she's in the water and she comes to the surface, and the way that her body is floating with the waves does not jive.
Something weird. Yeah, like, I don't know if it was the movement of her body in relation to the movement of the waves. I almost felt like it was the size of her body mm-hmm. in relation to the size of the waves. Like they messed it. I mean, obviously, I'm sure they didn't shoot it in a ocean. They shot it in a pool somewhere. Mm-hmm. But... like, it felt like her body was too tiny for the level of waves they had. Like, yeah, it was just... There was something that felt weird a little off with the CGI there.
But anyways, so you go ahead.
Okay, so there was stuff that I super, super disliked in this scene, but there was also one particular thing that I thought was really cool that I am sure the writers did not do on purpose. Not because I don't think they're capable of doing anything cool. I'm still holding out hope that maybe they will be. But just because, well, you'll understand when I get there. So we finally get the reveal of this secret advice that Galadriel's brother whispered to her when she was a little kid, talking about, she asked, basically, how do I know which light to follow in life? Because, when they're using water as this metaphor for the confusing events of life, and sometimes when you're under the water, light can reflect, and it looks like down is up and up is down, and how do I know which light to follow? And his advice is, sometimes we cannot know until we have touched the darkness. Okay, generously granting that means anything at all, it means that you know what the right thing to do was in retrospect because you made the wrong choice. Like, if you're in the water and you're confused which way is up and which way is down, and you follow this light and you end up on the bottom of the river, well, that was the wrong choice. And you learn because you got to the bottom of the river instead of breaking the surface for air like you needed to. So, again, if this phrase means anything at all, it means you only know the right thing to do in retrospect after having made the wrong choice. And that's somehow, which, okay, sometimes I guess is true.
But I wouldn't use that as like a general life principle.
Yeah, like, so Galadriel takes her brother's dagger and dives overboard and, in my opinion, makes very much the wrong choice. Now, of course, we know she's going to be proven to be correct in all her suspicions. That doesn't mean her suspicions are healthy, okay?
You've been watching too much cinema therapy, haven't you?
I have no comments. Cinema therapy's good.
Yeah,
you should all
great.
watch it,
Okay.
and it will change the way forever that you watch movies. But that is neither here nor there.
Yes.
So the thing that I thought was really cool about this scene, and it will become clear why I am 100% certain the writers did not intend to put this in there. So we see the entrance opening to the Undying Lands. And all the other elves on the boat, you just see this rapture on their faces, and they're joining in this song that's already being sung, and you can tell that they're just loving
That actually felt very Tolkien-esque, now that I think about it.
Yes, it did. But you can tell they're just loving the light that's shining on their faces, and Galadriel's looking very uncomfortable with it. Like, she's not liking the light on her face. The guy standing next to her holds out his hand and says, "Take my hand." And she knows that if she does, he's going to pull her with him into the song, into the light. And she looks very young. She considers it, but she looks like she can't quite commit to that. And then she decides to touch the darkness, whatever that means, and dives overboard. I'm going to be a theology nerd here for a moment. I thought, what a profound demonstration of why God cannot just let everybody into heaven. Why he can only let in the people who have been cleansed of their sin. If Galadriel had gone into... Exactly. If Galadriel had gone into the Undying Lands, still carrying all this anger and hate and vengeance and bitterness with her, first of all, it would not have been heaven for her, because the things that made Earth miserable for her are still there. And she would have then poisoned it for everyone else by bringing hate and anger and bitterness and vengeance, these things that aren't supposed to exist in heaven. She would have brought them into it, and that would have spoiled it for everyone else. So I thought, wow, that's a really brilliant demonstration of, okay, why would a loving God not just let everyone into heaven? This is why. Because if you have not been cleansed of your sin, and God lets you into heaven, first of all, it's not going to be heaven for you, because the thing that was making Earth hellish for you is still in you, and then you're going to poison it for everybody else, and God can't allow that to happen. So, theology nerd. So I did think that was a super cool moment. And I thought, wow, I thought about it all evening. But I'm sure that's not what the writers intended to convey with that scene. So, anyway, theology nerd moment is over.
And I guess for me, just to kind of comment on that whole overall scene, didn't really feel much of anything with that I haven't said already with the whole boat scene, but that wonderful quote from her brother, it's kind of
from my brother?
From Galadriel's brother.
Oh.
About sometimes we cannot know until we touch the darkness, was just kind of like the meme. It was kind of like, what? Like that's my reaction. or like the, or like the joke where it says the role of art is to ask, the role of great art is to ask a question. And sometimes that question is, what? So
the moment from have you seen Mars Attacks?
no, I have not.
It's the stupidest movie ever made in the history of mankind. But there's a moment in there where this alien ambassador is meeting with all the heads of state, and he's talking about, I don't even actually know what he's talking about, but something about, we shall all fall like grain or whatever. And the president and the Joint Chiefs and senators and everybody are like, ah. And this weazened old battle axe of a general goes, what the hell does that mean? That's very much the feeling I got with that, this advice of Galadriel's brother. So sorry, carry on.
Well, we're already at an hour and
maybe
10
episode
minutes.
2 needs to be its
Yes, it will be its own thing. So I think what we will finish off with is, what was your overall feeling watching episode 1?
I think my overall feeling watching episode 1 was me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for myself, it was just kind of, I wouldn't even say like meh. It was just kind of like, I don't know. I don't think I felt really much of anything. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, well,
that was a thing.
I watched it. On to episode 2, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So far, not seeing the justification for the vitriol either way, for it being stupendous and it being the worst thing ever.
Well, that's not vitriol if they're saying it's stupendous. Vitriol is like negative.
I know, but with how people have been defending it,
yes,
I would
like
call it
if you
vitriolic.
don't love it, you're a horrible person or whatever.
So,
I'm
throwing vitriol on both camps that have been unreasonable.
Yeah.
Not saying that whether you love it or you can love it, you can hate it, whatever. I'm just making a commentary of how people have
at least
vocalized
from episode one, well, and I've seen episode 2 now, and from both episode 1 and 2 so far, I understand it's because it's Tolkien. That's why at least one side is blowing their stacks. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the most horrific thing I've ever seen in my life. I wouldn't say it's good either. It's not as awful as Mars Attacks. Like, there's that. It's got that going for it.
Now we're going to get a flame war in the comments. Mars Attacks is brilliant! Do not slander the name! So.
Hey, Mars Attacks had a lot of really big name actors in it before any of them were big name actors. So I guess, like, yay, look how they got their start. I guess there's that. But, like, Mars Attacks is an awful movie. I will fight you.
Okay. Uh-oh. Okay. We just had a little
had a little glitch.
So anyways, hopefully there haven't been too many of those. Sorry about that. We're constantly working on... I say we're constantly working on...
improving our setup.
Yes. With the constant goal
dirty
is to...
dishes have been glowering at me from behind.
Don't mention it! They could have just thought it was aesthetic.
What kind of aesthetic is this?
Home grunge.
I have my pumpkins and my basket of pecans that I just harvested today. So look at the pecans and the pumpkins, and don't look at my dirty dishes that I have to do.
So okay, well I guess that'll be it for
episode
this.
1.
Yeah, and if
hopefully
we can,
our video on episode 2 will be a little shorter. I don't have anywhere near as many notes on episode 2.
Yeah. So, well, thank you all very much for taking the time to watch this. Hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, we would appreciate any and all conversation. Even if, you have very strong feelings, just feel free to reach out. And
even if you think Mars Attacks is the best movie ever, we still welcome your commentary.
But we'll see you all soon. And thank you for watching.
And remember that what we create matters.
Yes, thank you.